They bought me a $399 bucket list tour and hugged me at the gate like I was going to war. A jeweler in Athens handed me a receipt charged to my wife, power of attorney. She had been dead for 21 months. Hours later my phone lit with a photo of a quitclaim I never signed and a message from my investigator that said it all: "Your house is listed, open house in 3 days." Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. My name is Thomas Hale. I'm 72 years old, a retired school principal, a widower of 21 months, grandfather to 2 small comets named Nora and Ben who leave glitter and cracker crumbs everywhere they go. I still mow my own lawn. I still fix what breaks. I still talk to my wife at the kitchen window when the light hits the lemon tree the way she liked. I also still believed, until this summer, that my family would never put a price tag on me. The scheme didn't arrive with a crowbar. It came dressed as a gift. "Dad," my daughter said, "you need a break." Lydia stood in my kitchen with roses from the grocery store and a brochure she kept trying to keep casual. 7 nights, 3 countries. Athens, Rhodes by ferry, a day in Cyprus, then home. An off-season special they'd found through Trevor's friend, an absolute steal, Trevor kept saying, as if he had inherited the phrase along with his watch and his opinions. "You haven't been anywhere since Mom," Lydia said. Her voice softened on the last word, as if grief were a guest we both were trying not to wake. My son Mark stood behind her, nodding too hard. "You never say yes to yourself. Let us do this." I've been a principal long enough to recognize rehearsed lines. But the brochure showed little white houses stacked like playing cards against blue water, and the word "off-season" made the practical part of me stop guarding the door. "How much is this?" I asked, which was my mistake. They heard, "How much have you already paid?" $400 all in, Trevor said, grinning. "A friend owns a tour company. Family rate. $400. I paid more to have my septic pumped in March." Nora, 8 and earnest, hopped up onto a kitchen chair. "Please go, Grandpa. Bring me a rock from somewhere nobody else has one." I looked at her. At the 2 children who had made my house sound like a playground again. At Lydia twisting her wedding ring. At Mark's eyes skittering away from mine. I wanted to say no for reasons I couldn't name. Instead, I said yes. The strangest thing about betrayal is how it hands you your own words to use against yourself. I told everyone for 20 years to take breaks. I made teachers leave their classrooms. I put up posters reminding people to drink water. I thought if I did it often enough, I would never run out. The first hint came at the airport. At the check-in desk, the agent smiled at my passport. "Your daughter called to confirm your wheelchair." "I didn't request a wheelchair," I said. "Oh," she said, tapping. "It's in the note from the booking agent. Family wants you extra comfortable." I imagined Lydia, worried. I imagined Trevor inserting himself into anything that had leverage. "I'll be fine," I said, and smiled back. My knees are more stubborn than weak. Pride can look like strength if you squint. On the plane, an attendant handed me a form. "Complimentary excursions," it said at the top in a font trying to be friendly. There was a box for a "Legal Basics for Seniors" seminar at the hotel in Athens, and next to it, a line about "free notary services courtesy of Paros Trust Services." I crossed out the seminar and checked the cooking class. The second hint wore perfume and carried a wicker tray. The hotel in Athens was a polite kind of cheap, thin towels, a balcony that looked at a wall and called it a view, a front desk clerk with a smile that apologized for everything before it broke. On my second day, I ducked down a side street chasing a smell of cinnamon and lemon and found a jeweler's shop with a bell that chimed like a bird. "Your card didn't go through," the jeweler said, handing me a receipt. "I haven't bought anything," I said. He tapped the paper. My name, Thomas M. Hale, sat there above a line in Greek explaining that the purchase was part of a family account. The card number listed was mine. The signature underneath belonged to someone who thought handwriting was a costume. "Mrs. Hale will be happy," he said kindly, assuming he was reassuring me. "Power of attorney makes family very simple." "I don't have a Mrs. Hale," I said. He blinked. Ah. When I walked out, the world tilted a few degrees. The street felt longer, louder. It took me a full block to realize I had stopped at a payphone like a man in a film. I still have a U.S. calling card in my wallet from a trip to Boston in the 90s. I dialed the bank and listened to a recorded voice tell me my call mattered while two mopeds argued past. When I finally reached a human, she sounded young and careful. "Mr. Hale, I see here an attempt yesterday to authorize a durable power of attorney on your account." "Attempt?" "It is under review," she said. Our team flagged the notary stamp. "What notary stamp?" "On the power of attorney form." "I didn't sign a power of attorney." She hesitated the way people do when they are deciding whether their job description includes telling the truth. "May I ask," I said, "what name is on the agent line?" "Lydia Carver," she said. "Your daughter." The lemon inside me turned to metal. "Sir," the banker added quickly, "we did not process it. The seal is inconsistent with state records." Inconsistent. That careful word again. A polite way to say wrong without calling anyone a liar. "Freeze my accounts," I said. "All of them. And put a note that I am traveling abroad and none of my family is authorized to make changes." "Yes, sir," she said, relief leaking into her efficiency. Done. I hung up and stood there with a city moving around me, a man away from home with his name floating loose over a page. I called my neighbor Eddie from the 1990s payphone next, which is a sentence I never expected to say. Eddie is 60, bad at curtains and good at everything else. He has keys to my workshop because his lawnmower wheezes like a smoker and I like excuses to get out my tools. "If anyone shows up at my house who isn't you or the mailman, call the police," I said. "Tom," he said, his voice waking all the way up, "what's going on?" "I don't know yet. I did know one thing. I needed eyes at home." The third hint was a woman on a ferry telling me about her ex-husband. She was a retired notary from Utah who had once refused to stamp a deed for a nephew who swore his aunt wanted to gift him her condo. "I make people sign under their own weather," she said, tearing a piece of bread and handing half to a gull with a scar across its beak. "No pressure, no island air, no party music, no hands on their elbow." "Have you ever seen a forged stamp?" I asked. "Many," she said. "The ink is wrong, or the borderline is too fat, or the serial doesn't match the year. But that's not the part people forget. A good forgery uses the right paper. The right creases. The right coffee stain in the corner like it lived in somebody's kitchen for months." I watched the gull carry the bread away, my hands clenched around a railing that had been held by more people than any of us would ever know. Somewhere in the crease of the sea below us, a suit in my town was standing in a room with white paint and expensive lighting, telling a couple that a house with a lemon tree view would be on the market any day. I called Frank Demas. Frank used to be a detective. Now he is what people call a private investigator when they are being polite. I called him because he sat on our school safety committee for 3 years and because when my wife had chemotherapy he brought soup without waiting for thanks. Tom, he said. You sound like a man in a windstorm. My family is trying to sell me like luggage, I said, and told him about the jeweler, the bank, the complimentary notary. Frank didn't say I was overreacting. He did not tell me it was impossible. He took down names. He asked for the booking agent's email. He asked for the tour company's name. It's called Stargazer Journeys, I said. He snorted. There's a guy in town who opened that last year. Trevor played softball with him. He sells retirement experiences to adult children whose parents don't need them. Trevor, I repeated, and the name tasted like tin. Frank said he would go to the courthouse when it opened and pull the last 2 weeks of recorder's filings from my parcel number. He said he would call the title companies and use his I know everyone voice. He said he would talk to Lily at the UPS store, who always knew whose mail smelled like trouble. He would do all that while I took a bus to a monastery built on a cliff and tried not to imagine the inside of my house with strangers eating salted almonds in my kitchen. I took the bus anyway. Grief taught me how to do more than one thing at the same time. At the monastery, a monk led us through a courtyard that had looked the same for 600 years and would look the same long after my worries turned to dust. He smiled and asked where we were from and told us the right place to stand for a photograph that made the world look like it knew what it was doing. My phone buzzed against my hip. I stepped into an alcove and read a text from Frank. Found a quitclaim deed recorded yesterday. From you to Lydia. Recorded with a notary seal belonging to a woman named Allison W. Also found a listing agreement dated last week with a company Trevor consults for. They have an open house scheduled for Sunday. That is 3 days from now. The air thinned. I wrote back with my hands shaking. Pull the deed. Send me a photo. And Frank, get a copy of that notary's commission card. The photo came through blurry and mean. There was my name bent into someone else's handwriting. There was a notary stamp whose border was too fat, just like the woman on the ferry said. There was a serial number that didn't match our state's issue pattern. My son texted 1 hour later. Enjoy the trip, Dad. So happy you finally did something for you. Send pictures. I typed and erased. Typed and erased. Then I sent him a photograph of the monastery and wrote, beautiful. See you soon. I did not send him the deed. Not yet. I did not know which son I had. In Rhodes, I sat on a stone wall and watched a cat choose between 2 men's laps. In Cyprus, I stood under an afternoon so bright it hurt and read again the phrase, my heart, on a text message from my wife from 3 years ago and felt the small hard thing in my chest that knew what to do begin to move. On the morning of day 5, I checked out early and took a taxi to the airport. I did not tell the tour group. I did not tell my children. I called Frank and told him to meet me at arrivals with a locksmith he trusted and 2 things that could not be bought, a witness and a plan. You'll want a lawyer, he said. I have one, I replied. I paid for Lydia's braces and a paralegal's tuition. I will put the softer of the 2 in court for me. He laughed once, not because it was funny, but to clear the air. Bring your passport, he said. We'll need it. At home, the air smelled like eucalyptus and heat. The lemon tree leaned toward the kitchen window like a friend who still wanted to know what you'd seen. Frank's locksmith, a quiet woman named Sienna with a tattoo of a wren on her wrist, started in on the front door like she was untangling a necklace. Frank handed me a file folder. Here's the deed. Here is a printout of Allison's notary commission, cancelled last year. Here is a screenshot of the listing for your house, complete with that lemon tree you are always talking about. Here is a schedule of showings. There is one in 90 minutes. I pictured strangers opening my bedroom closet. I pictured them standing at the kitchen sink where my wife used to stem strawberries. What do we do first? I asked. First, he said, we make sure you can get into your own house. Then we call a lawyer and the police at the same time. The lock clicked. Sienna stepped back. I turned the knob and walked into my life. It looked like grief had searched it. Closets open, drawers ransacked, a file cabinet with its metal tongue pushed in and a stack of folders toppled like fallen soldiers. Lydia knew where I kept things. The folder that used to hold my deed sat open like a mouth waiting for a story. Where's your safe? Frank asked. In the garage behind the old cabinets, I said. Under the tarp marked Christmas. Grief had taught me how to hide, too. Sienna found the safe and knelt in front of it like a person greeting a dog. You kept the original deed? She asked. Made 3 copies and kept those too, I said. I kept everything. Principals are good at paper. Sienna did something with a stethoscope and her fingertips and then smiled slightly. The door swung open on hinges that had never once lied. There lay my original warranty deed with the state seal embossed hard enough to leave its thumbprint in the paper. There lay my wife's letter to me, the one we wrote together 35 years ago and never told anyone about. If one of us goes first, the other must walk away with our home intact. Make that your vow and your plan. I took a breath that tasted like a new page. Let's put your real deed where the fake one expected to be, Frank said. And let's give the fake one the audience it wants. He dialed his phone. Officer. We have a forged deed recorded on parcel 18-102-77, a listing scheduled in 90 minutes, and the owner present with his original deed and identification. We would appreciate a patrol car on site and a fraud detective if you have one. There might be a notary who wants to talk to you about her commission. We posted the words no trespassing and do not disturb owner on the front door like a pair of eyebrows. Sienna repaired the lock and added a deadbolt that made a satisfying sound. Frank parked his car across the street with a camera aimed at my driveway. The first realtor arrived with a smile that did not reach his eyes and a young couple with clipboards. Behind them, like a parade, came Lydia and Trevor, both of them dressed as if to prove they owned a mirror and a conscience. My daughter's face changed twice when she saw me. Surprise, then calculation. Trevor never made it past mild irritation. Dad, Lydia said, stepping forward, arms out, as if we were greeting one another at an airport. What are you doing home? There seemed to be a scheduling conflict, I said. Trevor laughed, loud and wrong. This is awkward, Tom. The buyers booked flights to see the house. The realtor cleared his throat. Sir, I have a listing agreement. You have a piece of paper with a bad stamp, I said. And my police officer friend would like to discuss why you did not check my identification. Sir, that is not how listing agreements work, he started, just as a patrol car rolled up and a plainclothes woman with a badge on her belt stepped onto my sidewalk. Good morning, she said. Who called about the forged deed? Frank did, I said. And the principal. She smiled like a person who appreciated a joke but had work to do. Everyone stepped to the side, she said. Nobody goes in the house. We're going to look at some documents. Trevor moved to say something and then decided against it. Lydia held her purse like a shield. "Mr. Hale," the detective said, "show me your identification and the original deed." I did. She took out one of those little magnifiers you use to look at the details money keeps secret and studied the seal. She nodded once, satisfied, and turned to the realtor. "And you?" she said, holding out her hand. He passed her the listing agreement like it was hot. "And you too," she said, "to my daughter and her husband. Do you have a copy of the quitclaim deed you recorded yesterday?" Trevor produced it like a magician pulling a flag from his sleeve. She held the paper up to the light. Her mouth smiled while her eyes did their own work. "Allison W., she read. "Notary commission cancelled last January for cause." "For what cause?" Frank asked. The detective looked at him like a teacher deciding how much to share. "Issuing stamps past her expiration." "Getting sloppy." Lydia's breathing got loud enough to hear. "I didn't know," she said. "You knew enough to schedule an open house before the ink was dry," the detective replied. "Mr. Hale, would you like to file a report?" "Yes," I said. "Good," she said. "And I suggest you call an attorney and file for a temporary restraining order and a lease pendens to cloud title. That will stop any sale until a judge can examine the deed." "I already called my attorney," I said. "She's on her way." I have learned in my life that when the rules are being abused, sometimes the fastest way to calm fear is to change the light in the room. That day, the light shifted when my lawyer walked up my driveway carrying a file thicker than it needed to be and wearing a look that said she would not enjoy this but she would be excellent at it. Lydia opened her mouth and closed it. Trevor tried to look like a man whose hair appointment had been interrupted by a misunderstanding. The realtor studied the pavement. "My lawyer's name is Angela Ramos. She grew up 2 blocks from my school and went to law school on a scholarship that started with a letter I wrote. When my wife died, she brought flowers and bread and then asked me what I could not ask myself: what do you need to do to keep everything else standing? Tom," she said now, her voice halfway between a hug and a rule. "We filed for the TRO an hour ago. The judge signed it 15 minutes later. A process server is on his way to serve your daughter and her husband with the order prohibiting any transfer of any asset in your name pending a hearing." She glanced at the detective. "And we'll be filing a criminal complaint as well. Forgery, attempted theft, and notary fraud." Trevor's smile cracked. "This is family," he said, like the word could close a door. "This is a crime," Angela said. Nora and Ben came around the corner then, running like they always did, Eddie behind them waving a bag of pretzels like a flag. "Grandpa!" Ben shouted. "You are early on purpose." Nora crashed into my hip and held on. Lydia took a step forward and froze in the little semicircle of law between us. Detective Chavez, who still had my fake signature in her hand, looked at the children and then back at me, and some muscle in her face softened. "Let's do this calmly," she said. "Nobody needs to scare the kids." "No," I said, "they do not." The process server arrived with the brisk efficiency of a man delivering weather. He handed Trevor and Lydia each a packet. They stared at the papers like they were trying to read instructions for a machine they did not realize had been turned on. "Mr. Hale," my lawyer said, "pack a bag. You are going to sleep at my office suite tonight. We will file the quiet title action in the morning to nullify the quitclaim. Frank will install cameras and motion sensors. Sienna will change all the locks. Detective Chavez will file her report. And me?" Lydia said in a small voice I recognized from somewhere old. "What do I do?" "You do not enter this property," Angela said. You do not touch your father's mail. You do not log into his accounts. You do not attempt to contact any title company. You go home and you call a lawyer, because I am not yours. Lydia pressed her lips together. Dad, she said, not looking at me, we didn't mean to hurt you. Then what did you mean to do? I asked. She cried the way she used to when she was 8, but now each tear had edges like glass. After they left, the house felt like someone had dropped a heavy box on the floor above my head. Frank turned to me. You want to sit? I want to pack. We packed under the sound of our own footsteps and the small good noises a house makes when it is relieved. I took 2 shirts, my toothbrush, my wife's letter, and the deed. I set Nora and Ben up at the table with paper and markers. Draw me the lemon tree, I said, so I know it's going to be here when I get back. Nora drew leaves like hands. Ben drew 4 lemons and a dog that has not existed in our life and will now, apparently. He labeled it hope in letters that leaned into one another the way siblings do when they still tell the truth. That night I slept on a couch in a law office surrounded by books about things people argue about when they have run out of smaller ways to be kind. I woke to coffee and to Angela saying, we have court at 10. Court sat on the 3rd floor, where speech sounds different because decisions live there. We went in with a file of photographs, recordings Frank made of Trevor's friend bragging about fast-tracking elders, a printout of Allison W.'s disciplinary record, a copy of my will that mentioned the trust my wife and I had established years ago and never touched. We went in with a copy of a text message from Trevor telling Lydia what to say if anyone asked. He signed it on the patio before the trip. He was tired and grateful. He said this would make everything easier. We came out 40 minutes later with a judge's order voiding the quitclaim deed, a criminal referral to the district attorney, and a lecture we all had to stand under because it belonged to more than just us. Families forget, the judge said, looking over his glasses, that love and ownership are separate verbs. Mr. Hale, your house stays yours. Ms. Carver, you will not contact your father except through counsel. Mr. Carver, do not address me with your hands. Trevor put his hands in his pockets like they came with instructions he had ignored. In the weeks after, the consequences took on their full names. Detective Chavez's unit charged Allison W. with notary fraud. They charged Trevor with attempted theft by deception and conspiracy. Lydia's charges were filed as accessory and forgery, then amended when she sat down and told Detective Chavez where she had gotten the stamp and whose idea the vacation had been. The tour company shut down 2 days after the DA served a warrant for their bookings. Frank told me later there had been a spreadsheet with a column labeled Elders' Assets, a detail that turned a courtroom hard. In my kitchen, measured life continued. The lemon tree dropped 3 small yellow ovals onto the lawn. Nora and Ben asked 100 questions that did not need answers, and then one that did. Grandpa, Nora said one night after dinner, can we still love Mom if she did a very bad thing? Yes, I said, and felt something ease inside me that could not be called peace but had that word's temperature. But love is not a set of keys. What is it, then? Ben asked. A promise, I said. And a place to come back to when you have learned something you would rather not know. Eddie grilled steaks in the backyard the day the DA called to tell me Trevor had taken a plea. 2 years and restitution, the assistant DA said, as if numbers could balance what betrayal does to a person's ribs. What about my daughter? I asked. Probation and community service, she said. She gave us everything we needed. It is still a crime. It is also a path. I thanked her and did not know which part of the news made my hands shake. That weekend, I called my bank and the title company and my insurance agent and put passwords in places they had never been, the way you put child locks on cupboards when you realize your house contains both children and bleach. I moved the house into the Hale family trust the way my wife and I had planned when our hair still remembered its color. I appointed Angela as successor trustee. I left a place for Nora and Ben that no one could sign away with a stamp. I also wrote 2 letters. One to Mark, and one to Lydia. To Mark, I wrote, "You are my son. You knew enough to know something was wrong. You did not speak. You can start today." To Lydia, I wrote, "The door is not locked, but it is no longer standing open. You will show up in the ways that do not require paper. You will show up for your children. You will work where work is needed. You will, one day, look me in the face and say the word I taught you to hate, no, and mean it when your husband calls you from a parking lot and asks if your father signed." We met in a small room at the courthouse and read my letters out loud because I believe in hearing your own name when you are holding paper that measures your life. Lydia cried until she hiccuped. Mark stared at his shoes like there were answers there. "Dad," Lydia said when her breath came back, "I was afraid." "So was I said. "That is not a defense. It is an explanation. I accept neither. I am a teacher at heart. I wanted a test here. A rubric. A set of check boxes that turned red to green when a daughter learned something. There isn't one. There is only work, which looks like everyday life with a small broom. We still cannot sit at the same table for long. Silence arrives like a neighbor and eats a piece of bread and does not leave. But Nora and Ben still climb the lemon tree, and I still get to tell them to come down before it breaks, and that is more than I thought I could ask for when I was standing in a jewelry shop in another country holding a receipt with my name bent wrong. This is the part of the story where people want the pure win. They want a photograph of a gavel, a headline with the word victory in a font size that makes it feel like a parade. I wanted that too, if I am honest, and there is a version of this story where I end it with the moment Detective Chavez put handcuffs on Trevor in the parking lot of a coffee shop and where I heard the small sound Lydia made, the sound of a hope she had not admitted she had dying in her throat. We could end there, and you could walk away satisfied. That is not how families work. Here is how it went the day after the plea became a sentence. I stood on my front steps and watched Nora and Ben draw a hopscotch in chalk, and Eddie next door pretended he had never cried when I told him what had happened. Lydia pulled up to the curb in a car she could not make payments on anymore and got out without a purse. Her eyes were swollen. Nora saw her and ran to the car like children do when their hearts are still deciding what to keep. "Mom!" Nora yelled. "We made lemonade without seeds." Lydia hugged her children as if the law were going to interrupt her, and when she finally looked up at me, her face had that expression brave people get when they know courage is not enough. "I'm going to meetings," she said. "The kind where you say your name out loud first." "Good," I said. "I have a job at the grocery store," she added, her voice wobbling with pride. "In produce." "I know it's not. It is a way to buy apples," I said. "No job is not." She nodded and looked at the lemon tree and then at me and started to speak and stopped and then tried again. "I can't ask you to forgive me," she said. "You don't have to," I said. "I am going to do that anyway. It will not feel like you want it to at first. It will feel like work. But I will do it because I promised your mother I would keep what she loved. That included you when you were small. It includes you now. And," I added, "because truth and kindness are better together when you can manage it, you will not be in my will." She closed her eyes like the sun had surprised her. "I know, she said softly. We moved then into a life that was not the one anybody ordered. It had rules we wrote in pen. It had boundaries that did not shift with the weather. It had bright spots, like Nora at the piano playing a song that knew when to end. It had long quiet afternoons where no one talked to anyone and that was allowed. It had a potluck in the backyard where the neighbors came and told bad jokes because they did not know what else to bring. And it had the lemon tree, dropping fruit into a world that did not always deserve something so bright. A month later, Frank called me to come down to the UPS store. Lily found something in the shred bin, he said. It was a stack of travel vouchers in the name of Stargazer Journeys. In the margins of one was Trevor's handwriting. He had the kind of hand that thought it was a personality. Next to my name, a note, Father likes lemon tree. Remove if sale stalls. I laughed. It sounded like relief learning how to sound like itself again. I'll frame it, I told Frank. Proof that I am a person. Not a file someone can put their stamp on. When I go to sleep now, sometimes I still imagine a room with white paint and expensive lighting and a stranger standing in my kitchen examining the way the afternoon moves through our house and thinking about what it would fetch with a different rug. Then I open my eyes and remember that my door is locked and my name is on the right paper in the right drawer and the lemon tree still leans toward the window like a friend. And sometimes, when the evening is what my wife used to call soft, I sit with Nora and Ben at the kitchen table and we draw. Nora makes a careful house with a roof that looks like it can hold weather. Ben draws a dog he named weeks ago as if he has been there since before we were. I draw a line from the lemon tree to the window and then to the table and then to our hands. If you connect them in that order, it looks like a rope you can hold on to. Love is not a set of keys, but betrayal is not a bulldozer. You can build again. It will look different and lower and closer to the ground. It will be strong where it needs to be and quiet where it can. It will have room for 2 small chairs with glitter and cracker crumbs and a plate set where your wife used to sit. It will have a place for your daughter to stand one day, maybe, when she has learned what we had to learn the hard way, and say, I am here, and mean it. Until then, I will keep the deed where it belongs. I will keep the lemon tree watered. I will keep the promises that matter. And I will keep a photograph in my wallet, not of the monastery on a cliff or the sea made of glass, but of a produce aisle where my daughter stands arranging yellow fruit with her hands, learning again what belongs to her and what does not.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to the story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.